This is Frank McGee, NBC News in Washington. This is the second in a series of programs unmatched in history. Never have so many people seen the major candidates for President of the United States at the same time. And never, until this series, have Americans seen the candidates in face-to-face exchange. Tonight, the candidates have agreed to devote the full hour to answering questions on any issue of the campaign.
Senator, last May in Oregon, you discussed the possibilities of sending apologies or regrets to Khrushchev over the U-2 incident. Do you think now that that would have done any good? Did you think so then?
Mr. Morgan, I suggested that if the United States felt that it could save the summit conference, that it would have been proper for us to have expressed regret. In my judgment, that statement has been distorted by Mr. Nixon and others in their debates around the country and in their discussions. Mr. Lodge on Meet the Press a month ago said if there was ever a case when we did not have law on our side, it was in the U-2 incident. The U-2 flights were proper from the point of view of protecting our security, but they were not in accordance with international law. And I said that I felt that rather than tell the lie which we told, rather than indicate that the flights would continue, in fact, I believe Mr. Nixon himself said on May 15th that the flights would continue, even though Mr. Herter testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee that they had been canceled as of May 12th, that it would have been far better that if we had expressed regrets, if that would have saved the summit, and if the summit is useful, and I believe it is. The point that is always left out is the fact that we expressed regrets to Castro this winter, that we expressed regrets to the Eisenhower administration, expressed regrets for a flight over southern Russia in 1958. We expressed regrets for a flight over eastern Germany under this administration. The Soviet Union in 1955 expressed regrets to us over the Bering Sea incident. The Chinese communists expressed regrets to us over a plane incident in 1956. That is the accepted procedure between nations. And my judgment is that we should follow the advice of Theodore Roosevelt. Be strong, maintain a strong position, but also speak softly. I believe that in those cases where international custom calls for the expression of a regret, if that would have kept the summit going, in my judgment, it was a proper action. It's not appeasement. It's not soft. I believe we should be stronger than we now are. I believe we should have a stronger military force. I believe we should increase our strength all over the world. But I don't confuse words with strength. And in my judgment, if the summit was useful, if it would have brought us closer to peace, that rather than the lie that we told, which has been criticized by all responsible people afterwards, it would have been far better for us to follow the common diplomatic procedure of expressing regrets and then try to move on.
Mr. Vice President.
I think Senator Kennedy is wrong on 3 counts. First of all, he's wrong in thinking, or even suggesting, that Mr. Khrushchev might have continued the conference if we had expressed regrets. He knew these fights were going on long before, and that wasn't the reason that he broke up the conference. Second, he's wrong in the analogies that he makes. The United States is a strong country. Whenever we do anything that's wrong, we can express regrets. But when the President of the United States is doing something that's right, something that is for the purpose of defending the security of this country against surprise attack, he can never express regrets or apologize to anybody, including Mr. Khrushchev. Now, in that connection, Senator Kennedy has criticized the President on the ground not only of not expressing regrets, but because he allowed this flight to take place while the summit conference or immediately before the summit conference occurred. This seems to me is criticism that again is wrong on his part. We all remember Pearl Harbor. We lost 3,000 American lives. We cannot afford an intelligence gap. And I just want to make my position absolutely clear with regard to getting intelligence information. I don't intend to see to it that the United States is ever in a position where, while we're negotiating with the Soviet Union, that we discontinue our intelligence effort. And I don't intend ever to express regrets to Mr. Khrushchev or anybody else if I'm doing something that has the support of the Congress and that is right for the purpose of protecting the security of the United States.
Mr. Morgan with a question for Senator Kennedy.
Senator, Saturday on television, you said that you had always thought that Quemoy and Matsu were unwise places to draw our defense line in the Far East. Would you comment further on that and also address to this question, couldn't a pullback from those islands be interpreted as appeasement?
Well, the United States has on occasion attempted, mostly in the middle 50s, to persuade Chiang Kai-shek to pull his troops back to Formosa. I believe strongly in the defense of Formosa. These islands are a few miles, 5 or 6 miles off the coast of Red China within a general harbor area and more than 100 miles from Formosa. We have never said flatly that we will defend Quemoy and Matsu if it's attacked. We say we will defend it if it's part of a general attack on Formosa, but it's extremely difficult to make that judgment. Now, Mr. Herder, in 1958, when he was Undersecretary of State, said they were strategically undefensible. Admiral Spruance and Collins in 1955 said that we should not attempt to defend these islands in their conference in the Far East. General Ridgway has said the same thing. I believe that when you get into a war, if you're going to get into a war for the defense of Formosa, it ought to be on a clearly defined line. One of the problems, I think, at the time of South Korea was the question of whether the United States would defend it if it were attacked. I believe that we should defend Formosa. We should come to its defense. To leave this rather in the air, that we will defend it under some conditions but not under other, I think is a mistake. Secondly, I would not suggest the withdrawal at the point of the communist gun. It is a decision finally that the nationalists should make. And I believe that we should consult with them and attempt to work out a plan by which the line is drawn at the island of Formosa. It leaves 100 miles between the sea. But with General Ridgway, Mr. Herder, General Collins, Admiral Spruance, and many others, I think it's unwise to take the chance of being dragged into a war which may lead to a world war over two islands which are not strategically defensible, which are not, according to their testimony, essential to the defense of Formosa. I think that we should protect our commitments. I believe strongly we should do so in Berlin. I believe strongly we should do so in Formosa. And I believe we should meet our commitments to every country whose security we've guaranteed. But I do not believe that that line, in case of a war, should be drawn on those islands, but instead on the island of Formosa. And as long as they are not essential to the defense of Formosa, it's been my judgment ever since 1954, at the time of the Eisenhower Doctrine for the Far East, that our line should be drawn in the sea around the island itself.
Mr. Vice President.
I disagree completely with Senator Kennedy on this point. I remember in the period immediately before the Korean War, South Korea was supposed to be indefensible as well. Generals testified to that. And Secretary Acheson made a very famous speech at the press club early in the year that Korean War started, indicating in effect that South Korea was beyond the defense zone of the United States. I suppose it was hoped when he made that speech that we wouldn't get into a war. But it didn't mean that. We had to go in when they came in. Now, I think as far as Quemoy and Matsu are concerned, that the question is not these two little pieces of real estate. They are unimportant. It isn't the few people who live on them. They are not too important. It's the principle involved. These two islands are in the area of freedom. The nationalists have these two islands. We should not force our nationalist allies to get off of them and give them to the communists. If we do that, we start a chain reaction, because the communists aren't after Quemoy and Matsu. They're after Formosa. In my opinion, this is the same kind of woolly thinking that led to disaster for America in Korea. I'm against it. I would never tolerate it as President of the United States, and I will hope that Senator Kennedy will change his mind if he should be elected.